Christmas Eve always smelled the same in my mother's house. Cinnamon. Pine needles. Butter melting somewhere it didn't belong. I was standing in her kitchen, flour on my hands, an apron tied too tight around my waist, when I heard laughter spill out of the living room. 25 people. Maybe more. Glasses clinking. Someone telling a loud story. My mother walked in, looked at the stove, still cold, and smirked. "It's only 25 people," she said. "Why haven't you started cooking?" That moment didn't break me. It clarified everything. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I didn't remind her that I was the CEO of a company pulling in over $4 million a year. A company she didn't even know existed. I just smiled. Untied the apron. And that night, I booked a one-way ticket to Miami. My name is Lily Septton. I'm 37 years old. And this is the story of how I stopped being my family's invisible servant. But to understand that moment, you have to go back 15 years. Christmas 2009. My first Christmas as an adult. I was 22, fresh out of college with a communications degree and 0 job offers. The economy had collapsed, resumes disappeared into black holes, and I was back in my childhood bedroom in Denver, staring at rejection emails that all sounded the same. That December evening, my parents' house looked perfect. My mother had decorated every corner, garlands, candles, porcelain angels lined up like they were judging us. 15 guests were coming for dinner. Family. Friends. A few of my dad's business associates. "Lily, you're handling dinner," my mother announced. She didn't ask. She informed. I looked up from my laptop. The whole dinner? For 15 people? "Sarah has finals," she said, arranging flowers like this was settled law. "She can't be distracted." Sarah, my younger sister, was 18. A freshman at the University of Colorado. At that exact moment, she was lying on the couch scrolling through her phone. "I have job applications to finish," I said carefully. "There's a marketing position I'm applying for." My mother didn't even turn around. "This is family," she said. "Family comes first." That was the first sign. Sarah got exemptions. I got assignments. For 2 days, I lived in that kitchen. Roasted a 12-pound turkey. Mashed potatoes from scratch. Green bean casserole. Cranberry sauce. Dinner rolls. 2 pies. I polished silverware. Set the table. Adjusted the centerpiece until my fingers ached. When guests arrived, I was still wearing an apron stained with gravy. My father stood in the living room with a glass of scotch, proudly introducing Sarah to a business partner. "This is my youngest," he said. "She's studying marketing. Going to take over the company someday." I walked past carrying appetizers. No introduction. No glance. Later, one of the guests picked up a stuffed mushroom. "These are incredible," she said. "That's just Lily," my mother replied, waving her hand. "She has time. No job yet." Something settled into place inside me that night. A quiet understanding. This wasn't temporary. This was a role. And I was going to play it for a very long time. By the time I realized the kitchen wasn't just a phase, it was already my permanent address. Every holiday after that first Christmas followed the same script. Thanksgiving. Easter. Birthdays. Anniversaries. Any gathering that involved food, logistics, or cleanup somehow circled back to me. I wasn't asked. I was expected. Sarah, on the other hand, was always busy. Finals. Internships. Networking events. Important conversations in the living room while I chopped onions behind a closed door. I learned quickly that my value wasn't measured by what I achieved. It was measured by how useful I was. In 2012, something shifted. I stopped waiting for permission. I started an event planning business with nothing but a laptop, a borrowed camera, and the skills I'd unknowingly perfected in my parents' house: timelines, coordination, crisis management, making impossible things happen quietly. I called it Stellar Events. At first, it was small. Birthday parties. Engagement dinners. A non-profit fundraiser where the budget barely covered gas money. But I was good. Not loud good. Not flashy good. Reliable good. Clients came back. They told their friends. Word spread. When I mentioned it to my mother, she barely looked up from her magazine. So, like children's parties? She asked. Corporate events too, I said. Product launches. Conferences. That's nice, dear, she replied. Can you grab the dry cleaning on your way home? That was the last time I brought it up. I learned something important then. If people are committed to misunderstanding you, explaining yourself is wasted energy. So I stopped talking. I built my company in silence. By 2014, I landed my first serious client, a tech startup launching their first product. They paid me $8,000. I remember staring at the contract, hands shaking, thinking this amount of money would have changed my life just a year earlier. By 2018, I had 5 employees and an office downtown. By 2022, we were managing events for companies I used to read about in business magazines. By 2024, Stellar Events had 23 employees and crossed $4 million in annual revenue. My parents still thought I was doing freelance stuff. And I let them. When I visited their house, I dressed down. Drove my old Honda instead of my Audi. I never mentioned the office, the payroll, the contracts. Why? Because every time I imagined telling them, I already knew the response. A comparison. A dismissal. A reminder of how Sarah was doing so well. So I protected my peace by keeping my success private. But that doesn't mean it didn't hurt. Thanksgiving 2024 was the breaking point. I had just closed a $600,000 deal with a hotel chain. I was exhausted and proud in that quiet, adult way, no confetti, just relief. I walked into my parents' house, and my mother handed me an apron. Turkey needs basting every 30 minutes, she said. I made a schedule. A schedule. 23 people reported to me at work. CEOs listened when I spoke. And my mother handed me a turkey schedule like I was still 22 and unemployed. I didn't say anything. I basted the turkey. While I served dinner, Sarah talked about how stressful her job was, marketing director at my father's company. A position she hadn't interviewed for. A title handed to her like a gift. Sarah's doing incredible work, my dad said proudly. Revenue is up 12%. I could have said my company grew 31% that year. I didn't. Because I finally understood something painful and freeing at the same time. They weren't overlooking me by accident. They were comfortable with who I was to them. The helper. The fallback. The one who filled gaps so others could shine. That night, standing at the sink with my hands in dishwater, I made a quiet promise to myself. This would be the last holiday I disappeared. I didn't know how yet. I just knew I couldn't keep betraying myself to keep the peace. 2 weeks later, on December 22nd, my phone buzzed. An email. One that would force me to choose. December 22nd, 2024. 9:47 in the morning. I was sitting alone in my office, coffee going cold on my desk, watching snow fall over downtown Denver. It was one of those quiet moments where nothing feels urgent, where you almost forget how hard you've worked to get here. Then my phone buzzed. I almost ignored it. Running a company teaches you that not every notification deserves your attention. But something made me look. A name. A title. A weight behind the words. Victoria Caldwell. CEO, Meridian Holdings. I opened the email slowly, like it might disappear if I moved too fast. Meridian Holdings was a giant, hospitality, real estate, global projects. The kind of company you don't pitch. They find you. They had reviewed our work. They had spoken to our clients. They had done their research. They wanted Stellar Events as their exclusive event partner for 2025. The proposed contract value was $2.1 million. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I read the email again, then a third time, just to be sure my mind wasn't filling in numbers that weren't there. Across the room, Marcus noticed my expression. He stood up, walked over, and leaned on the edge of my desk. I handed him my phone without saying a word. He read it once. Then again. "This is real," he said quietly. "But there's a condition." Of course there was. "Victoria Caldwell wants to meet you in person before she signs," he said. "She doesn't do business with people she hasn't looked in the eye." "That's fine," I replied. "When?" He hesitated. December 24th. 11 a.m. Miami. Christmas Eve. The word hit harder than I expected. I asked if we could move the meeting. Marcus shook his head. Victoria was leaving the country on the 26th. If we didn't sign on the 24th, they would move on to their second choice. Lux Affairs. My biggest competitor. This wasn't just a contract. It was momentum. Reputation. The difference between becoming national or staying regional. I knew what this meant. "Book the flight," I said. Marcus smiled. "Already done." That's when my phone buzzed again. "Mom. Call me. Important." I stared at the screen longer than I should have. Part of me knew I should ignore it. Protect the moment. Focus on the opportunity that had taken 12 years to earn. But another part of me, the trained part, answered. She didn't waste time. "Christmas plans have changed," she said. "Sarah's friends are joining us. 25 people total. 25. I need you here early tomorrow," she continued. "Cooking, decorating, everything. Sarah's too busy with work." I closed my eyes. "Mom, I can't," I said. "I have a business trip." She laughed. Actually laughed. "Miami?" she said. "For what? One of your little parties?" "It's an important client meeting." "Lily, your freelance work can wait," she replied. "This is family." That word again. Family. Always used when I was expected to disappear. "I'm not canceling," I said. The silence on the line was sharp. Then her voice changed. Cold. Precise. "You've always been selfish," she said. Your sister gives everything to this family, and you can't even cook one meal. Something inside me finally stopped bending. I'm going to Miami, I said. If you walk out on this family, she snapped, don't bother coming back. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel scared. I felt free. Goodbye, Mom, I said, and hung up. Marcus was standing in the doorway when I looked up. This is the moment, he said. You can't keep shrinking yourself for them. That night, I packed my bag. And I didn't feel guilty at all. The plane lifted off from Denver at 8:45 p.m. on December 23rd, cutting through thick winter clouds and carrying me away from everything I'd been expected to be. As the city lights disappeared beneath us, I felt something loosen in my chest. Not joy. Not relief. Just space. For the first time in years, there was nothing pulling me back toward that kitchen. The flight to Miami took a little over 4 hours. I spent most of it reviewing the Meridian contract, underlining clauses, writing notes in the margins, preparing answers for questions I knew Victoria Caldwell would ask. I'd done this 100 times before, but this one felt different. This wasn't just another deal. This was a turning point. Somewhere over Texas, I pulled a magazine out of my bag. The October issue of Forbes. I hadn't planned on bringing it, but there it was. Page 47. A full-page photo of me standing in my office, arms crossed, the Denver skyline behind me. The headline called me a quiet force in the event industry. I read the article again, slowly, reminding myself that none of this was imaginary. That I hadn't made it up. That my success existed even if my family refused to see it. We landed in Miami at 1:30 a.m. The air was warm, heavy with salt and humidity. Palm trees blurred past the car window as the Uber took me to the hotel. The Fontainebleau was all glass and soft lighting, the kind of place that made you stand a little straighter just by walking through the lobby. I checked in, collapsed onto the bed, and slept for 6 uninterrupted hours. When I woke up on Christmas Eve, my phone showed 11 missed messages. 4 from my mother. 3 from Sarah. 2 from my father. 2 unknown numbers I didn't bother opening. I didn't read any of them. I showered, dressed in my charcoal suit, and went over my notes one last time. At 10:30 a.m., I arrived at Meridian Holdings headquarters. A glass tower overlooking the bay. Polished floors. Quiet confidence. The receptionist checked my ID and handed me a visitor badge like this was any other day. Miss Caldwell is expecting you, she said. 40th floor. The elevator ride felt endless. My heart pounded, but not from fear. From readiness. I had earned this meeting. Every late night, every overlooked holiday, every moment of being underestimated had led here. My phone buzzed just before the doors opened. Sarah. I declined the call. Then a voicemail appeared. Against my better judgment, I listened. Her voice was frantic. She said there was no food. No caterer. No backup plan. Then she said something that made my stomach drop. Victoria Caldwell is supposed to be at our dinner tonight. The words echoed in my head as the elevator doors slid open. Victoria Caldwell. My parents' house. Christmas dinner. I didn't understand how yet, but I knew this wasn't a coincidence I could control. A woman in a navy dress greeted me and led me into a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows and a long table covered in documents. And there she was. Victoria Caldwell herself. Silver hair. Sharp eyes. A presence that filled the room without effort. She shook my hand firmly. Miss Septton, she said. It's a pleasure to finally meet you. I sat down, opened my folder, and focused on the contract in front of me. Whatever was happening back in Denver, it would have to wait. This meeting mattered. The meeting began exactly on time. Victoria Caldwell didn't waste words, and she didn't tolerate theatrics. She asked precise questions about scalability, crisis management, vendor control, and margins. I answered calmly, clearly, without trying to impress her. I wasn't selling a dream. I was presenting a system I had spent 12 years building. Halfway through, she closed the folder in front of her and looked directly at me. "You don't speak like someone trying to prove herself," she said. "You speak like someone who already knows her worth." I smiled, just slightly. By noon, the contract was signed. $2.1 million. 1 year. Exclusive rights. Victoria stood, extended her hand, and said, "Welcome to Meridian Holdings. We're betting on you." As I walked out of the building, Miami sunlight flooding the street, my phone exploded with notifications. Missed calls. Voicemails. Texts stacked on top of each other. I finally listened. My mother's voice came first, tight, furious, panicked. "Lily, where are you? Do you know who's coming to dinner tonight?" Then Sarah. "She's already here," she whispered like someone afraid to be overheard. "Victoria Caldwell. Dad invited her because Meridian is considering working with us. We thought you could help." Help. I leaned against the side of the building and closed my eyes. They had invited Victoria Caldwell to Christmas dinner without a caterer. Without a plan. Without knowing she was already my client. They hadn't asked me if I was available. They assumed. I checked the time. 12:38 p.m. Victoria Caldwell was scheduled to leave for the airport at 4. I could walk away. I should have. But I didn't. I returned to the 42nd floor and knocked on Victoria's office door. She looked up, surprised. "There's something you should know," I said. "You've been invited to my parents' Christmas dinner." One eyebrow lifted. "And?" she asked. "And they don't know I'm the person you just signed with." Silence stretched between us. Then Victoria laughed. Not softly. Not politely. "Oh," she said. "This should be interesting." She checked her watch. "I have time," she added. "Let's go." We arrived in Denver just before sunset. Snow was falling, thick and quiet. My parents' house glowed warmly from the inside, like nothing inside it was about to shatter. The moment Victoria stepped into the living room, the air changed. My father stood too quickly. My mother froze. Sarah went pale. Victoria shook my father's hand first. "Thank you for the invitation," she said. "Though I must say, I prefer to know when I'm being introduced to the real decision-maker." She turned to me. "Lily runs stellar events," Victoria continued calmly. "And she's the reason Meridian Holdings signed a 7-figure contract this morning." No one spoke. The truth didn't need volume. My mother's face drained of color. My father's mouth opened, then closed. Sarah stared at me like she was seeing a stranger. I didn't smile. I didn't explain. I just stood there, finally visible. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't asking to be seen. No one spoke for a long moment. The kind of silence that isn't empty, just heavy. It sat in the room, pressing against the walls, rearranging everything people thought they knew. My mother was the first to move. She straightened the tablecloth that didn't need fixing, picked up a serving spoon, then put it back down. Busy hands. A familiar defense. I didn't know, she said finally, not looking at me. If I had known. Victoria Caldwell interrupted her gently, but firmly. That's usually how this happens, she said. People don't know, because they never asked. My father cleared his throat. His pride had nowhere to go now. The story he had told himself for years had cracked straight down the middle. Why didn't you tell us? He asked me. I met his eyes. Calm. Steady. You never made space to listen, I said. And I stopped volunteering for rooms where I wasn't wanted. Sarah hadn't said a word. She looked small in a way I had never seen before. Not defeated. Just exposed. Dinner happened anyway. Quiet. Awkward. Forks clinking too loudly against plates. Victoria was polite, observant, asking questions that made people uncomfortable without raising her voice. She thanked my mother for the food, complimented the timing, the coordination, the flow of the evening. Then she turned to me. You've been doing this your whole life, she said. Running events without credit. I nodded. After dessert, Victoria checked her watch and stood. Thank you for the invitation, she said. And thank you for tonight. At the door, she paused beside me. People like you don't need stages, she said quietly. But they always end up owning them. Then she left. The house felt smaller after that. My parents didn't apologize that night. They weren't there yet. Maybe they never would be. But something fundamental had shifted. The roles were broken. The script was gone. When I stood to leave, my mother asked, softly this time, will you come for Christmas next year? I considered the question carefully. I'll come, I said. If I'm invited as a guest. Not assigned a role. She nodded. That was all. Outside, the cold air bit my cheeks as I walked to my car. Snowflakes melted against my coat. My phone buzzed, an email confirmation from Meridian Holdings. Signed. Final. Real. I sat in the driver's seat for a moment without starting the engine. For the first time, I wasn't carrying anyone else's expectations with me. Just my own life. And it was finally enough.